The candle in the window of Blackthorn Keep had burned down to nothing when Elena Voss finally stopped crying long enough to think clearly. She sat on the edge of the bed, watching the man beside her sleep, and told herself that what she was about to do was the only way to keep him alive. Cale Draven, Alpha King of the Northern Pack, slept the way he did everything else, completely, without holding anything back. His arm was still stretched across the space where she had been lying only a moment before. In sleep, his face lost the hard lines that command had carved into it over the years. He looked, for a few private hours each night, like a man instead of a king. Elena reached out and almost touched his hair, then stopped herself. If she touched him now, she would not have the strength to leave. She had learned the truth 2 days earlier, from an old servant named Marta, who had worked in Blackthorn Keep since before Cale was born. Marta had pulled her into a storage room between the kitchens and the cellar, her hands shaking, and told her a story that Elena wished she could unhear. 50 years ago, a queen not so different from Elena had also carried an alpha heir. She had been poisoned slowly, over months, by someone inside the castle walls, someone trusted, someone close. The child had never taken a first breath. The queen had died believing it was simply bad luck, a weak body, nothing more. Marta said it happened once more, a generation later, to another woman who loved another king. Both times, the poisoner was never found. Both times, life at Blackthorn Keep simply continued, as if grief were something that could be swept under a rug and forgotten. "There are papers," Marta had whispered. "Old letters. I found them by accident, hidden behind a loose stone in the east wall. Someone in this castle has done this before, and I fear they will try again. You must be careful, my lady. You must be so very careful." Elena had wanted to laugh it off as an old woman's fear of ghosts, but 3 nights ago, she had felt strange after drinking her evening tea, dizzy and sick in a way that had never happened before. She told herself it was nerves. She told herself it was nothing. But she could not stop thinking about Marta's warning, and she could not stop thinking about the child growing inside her, a child who could not yet defend itself against anyone. She had tried to tell Cale. She had opened her mouth to explain everything, twice, and both times something had stopped her. Cale was a good man, but he was also a proud one, and his pride ran through every corner of his court. If she told him someone close to him was a poisoner, he would tear the castle apart looking for proof, and whoever was guilty would see him coming from a mile away. They would hide, they would wait, and one day, when Cale's guard was lowered even slightly, they would try again. There was only one place inside their world where nobody from Cale's court would think to search for her. Only one place strange enough, dangerous enough, that no assassin would follow her there without being noticed immediately. The castle of House Ashgrave, Cale's enemy for 2 generations. It was a foolish plan. It was maybe the most foolish plan Elena had ever considered in her life. But foolish was better than watching her child die the way 2 others had died before, quietly, in the dark, while everyone around them smiled and pretended not to know. So on that final night, Elena rose from the bed before the first birds began to sing. She dressed in silence, wrapped a plain gray cloak around her shoulders, and looked back one more time at the man she loved. "I am not leaving because I stopped loving you," she whispered, so softly that even the walls barely heard her. "I am leaving so that our child gets the chance to love you too." Then she walked out into the mist, and Blackthorn Keep swallowed the sound of her footsteps. Cale woke at dawn to an empty bed and a cold place beside him where warmth should have been. At first, he was not worried. Elena sometimes rose early to walk in the gardens, unable to sleep with so much on her mind now that she was carrying their child. He waited by the window, expecting to see her small figure moving between the rose bushes below. She did not appear. By midday, worry had turned into something sharper. By evening, sharper had turned into fear, the kind of fear Cale had not felt since he was a boy, watching his own father bury a stillborn brother he never got to meet. He tore through the castle, questioning every guard, every servant, every soul who might have seen her leave. No one had. Except Marta, who finally, tearfully, told him everything. The old letters, the poison from decades past, her warning to Elena, and Elena's silence afterward, a silence Marta had mistaken for calm acceptance, instead of a woman quietly building the courage to disappear. Cale listened to it all with his jaw locked so tightly it ached. Rage came first, hot and blinding. Rage at whoever had done this to his family. Rage at himself for not noticing the fear in Elena's eyes these past weeks. But underneath the rage was something worse. Underneath was terror, plain and simple. The terror of a man who suddenly understood that the woman carrying his child believed she was safer anywhere else in the world than beside him. He did not sleep that night. He sat in his study with the old letters Marta had finally handed over, reading names, dates, small details that painted a picture no one had wanted to see for 50 years. Somewhere in those pages, a pattern began to form, a pattern that pointed, again and again, toward one particular family line, still living within his own court. But finding the truth would take time, and Cale did not have time to spare while Elena was out there somewhere, alone, frightened, carrying his child through a world that had already proven itself capable of terrible things. It took nearly 3 months for word to reach him. A trader passing near the southern border mentioned, almost as an afterthought, a pregnant woman living quietly within the walls of House Ashgrave, taken in by the old lady of that house herself. The description matched Elena so closely that Cale's hands shook as he listened. House Ashgrave, his enemy. The one place he had never thought to search, because the idea of Elena walking willingly into rival territory had seemed impossible. He rode through the night with only a handful of guards, ignoring every warning that entering Ashgrave land under anything less than a full battalion was suicide. He did not care. There was a fragile truce between their houses, thin as ice on a spring lake, and he was prepared to walk across it even if it cracked beneath his feet. The gates of Ashgrave Castle rose out of the darkness, like something from an old story, gray stone against a grayer sky. Cale expected resistance. Instead, he was met at the gate by an elderly woman wrapped in a heavy shawl, her eyes sharp despite her age. "I wondered when you would come," she said simply. "I am Lady Ashgrave. Your Elena has been under my roof for 3 months now. She is safe. She is well, and she has been waiting, though she would never admit it, for you to find her." Cale's chest tightened at the words, "Take me to her." Lady Ashgrave studied him for a long moment, as if deciding whether he deserved what he was asking for. Then she nodded and led him through the halls of the castle that had haunted his family's nightmares for 2 generations. They found Elena in a small sitting room near the back of the castle, a fire crackling gently in the hearth. She was seated in a chair by the window, one hand resting on the round curve of her belly, watching the flames. When she heard footsteps behind her, she turned, and the moment her eyes met Cale's, 3 months of fear and loneliness broke across her face all at once. "Cale," she breathed, rising slowly to her feet. He crossed the room in 3 long strides and stopped just short of reaching for her, his hands trembling with the effort of holding himself back, afraid that if he touched her she might vanish again, like some cruel trick of his exhausted mind. "Why?" he asked, his voice rough. "Would you run to the one place I could never protect you?" Elena's eyes filled with tears, but she did not look away. "Because it was the one place no one from your court would think to look. I could not protect our child from an enemy hiding inside your own walls, Cale, not while staying beside you. I thought if I disappeared, whoever it was would have no reason to come after me, and I could keep our baby safe until I found proof. You should have told me." "And what would you have done?" Her voice cracked, not from anger, but from months of carrying a burden alone. "You would have torn the castle apart searching for someone who would simply hide and wait. I could not risk our child's life on the hope that you would find them before they found us." Cale closed the last distance between them, and finally, gently, pulled her into his arms. She stiffened for only a heartbeat, before melting against him, months of fear finally allowed to release. "I found the letters," he said quietly against her hair. "Marta gave them to me the night you disappeared. I have spent every day since chasing down names, checking old records, questioning people I once trusted without question. I believe I know who is responsible." Elena pulled back just enough to look up at him. "Who?" "Counselor Hess," Cale said, the name tasting bitter in his mouth. "His grandmother served as head healer during the first death, 50 years ago. His mother served in the same role during the second. He inherited her position 2 years before you and I met. He has had access to every meal, every tea, every remedy given to every expecting mother in Blackthorn Keep for over a decade. Elena's hand went instinctively to her belly. He gave me the tea that made me sick. I know, Kale said grimly. I had it tested before I left. There was enough poison in the dried leaves to slowly weaken a person over weeks, just enough that no one would suspect anything beyond bad health or bad luck. Exactly like the stories Marta told you. Silence settled between them, heavy with everything that had almost happened and everything that still needed to be done. Finally, Elena spoke. What happens now? Kale took her hands in his, steady despite the storm still raging behind his eyes. Now we go home, together, and this time, when I confront Hess, you will be standing beside me, instead of hidden away where I cannot protect you. I have learned my lesson these past 3 months, Elena. I will never again let you carry a burden like this alone, no matter how much you believe you are protecting me by doing so. Lady Ashgrave, who had been standing quietly by the doorway, cleared her throat gently. For what it is worth, young Alpha King, your Elena has more courage than most warriors I have met in my long life. She walked into enemy territory carrying your child, rather than risk either of you to a threat she could not yet name. That is not weakness. That is love, wearing the disguise of sacrifice. Kale looked at Elena, at the woman who had risked everything, including his enemy's mercy, to protect their unborn child. She has always had more courage than she gives herself credit for. They left Ashgrave Castle 3 days later, once Elena was strong enough to travel, and Lady Ashgrave had extended a promise of continued peace between their two houses. A peace built not on old treaties, but on gratitude for a kindness shown to a frightened young mother when she needed it most. Back at Blackthorn Keep, the truth came out exactly as Kale had feared. Counselor Hess, when confronted with the evidence, tried first to deny everything, then to explain it away as coincidence, and finally, when neither worked, revealed a bitterness passed down through his family for 3 generations, a belief that his bloodline deserved power that had always belonged to the Draven line instead. He was removed from his position and from the castle grounds, his crimes laid bare before the entire court, so that no whisper of doubt could follow Elena or her child ever again. Months later, in the depth of winter, Elena gave birth to a healthy daughter, with her mother's steady eyes and her father's stubborn chin. They named her Sarah, and when Kale held her for the first time, he wept openly in front of his entire court, unashamed of the tears tracing down his face. Elena watched him from the bed, exhausted, but at peace, for the first time in nearly a year. She thought of the candle that had burned down on that final night at Blackthorn Keep, of the mist that had swallowed her footsteps, of the enemy's castle that had somehow become a place of safety instead of danger. She had left before dawn to save their child, and in the end, it was that same choice, born from fear and love in equal measure, that had brought their small family safely into the light.